Buddy, and welcome to Where Are They Now in Sports? This is brought to you by Malibu Clothes. Get your suits right here at the Malibu Clothes building in Beverly Hills. And if you're not in the area, all you have to do is go to www.malibuklothesbh.com. Today's guest is a former Major League Baseball player, and I'll tell you, this guy had a personality. Please welcome former Major League Baseball player Steve Lyons. Welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Eddie. Everything's fine.
You started off in Oregon, right? Is that where you played?
I was born in Seattle, grew up in Oregon, went to Oregon State, and then after that, got the chance to play some pro ball after that. So yeah, I'm an Oregon guy, even though my father's from Boston. So when I got drafted by the Red Sox originally, he was over the moon. But he was in the Army in Washington and literally couldn't afford to go home. So I was born in an Army hospital in Tacoma, Washington.
And, Harold Reynolds is actually from Eugene, Oregon, is that?
He's from Corvallis. I grew up in Eugene. And, truth be told, I was a huge Duck fan, wanted to go to Oregon. I moved to Portland right before my senior year, and Oregon didn't offer me a baseball scholarship, and Oregon State did. So I became a Beaver fan really, really quickly. And, really, as fate would have it, was the best thing that ever happened to me because the Ducks actually dropped their program after my sophomore season. So a lot of the guys that I went to high school with actually went down to Oregon and played. And after their sophomore year, they were without a team. And I got to go on and play a really good summer league in Kansas before my junior year, came back for my junior year, ended up getting drafted. I was playing in high school with guys that were good enough to play pro baseball, but because they had to scramble to go find a new school, they kind of got lost in the shuffle and really never got a chance to play. And boy, had I gone to Oregon instead, I think everything would have been different.
Well, now, when you were in high school, Steve, were you the man? Were you like, oh, this guy hits bombs, this guy's the man?
No, I was never a really overly outstanding player at any level I ever went to. I mean, I was certainly one of the top 5 players on the team. I was someone that you had to worry about. But I always knew that in high school and through college, I certainly played with guys on the team that were better than I was. But nobody had a bigger heart than I did, and nobody wanted it worse than I did. And so that's the kind of guy I was. I firmly believe that if you have like good chemistry on a team and you're playing with a bunch of guys that just want to win and want to play for each other, you have a chance to beat a team that's way more talented than you are, if they just show up. Now, if you play against a team that's really talented and they also have that same attitude and they have a lot of heart, well, then you got no chance.
What was your career at Oregon State? I mean, did you...
It was average. It gave me the opportunity to get better because I was no longer playing football and basketball. Became baseball full time. But let's see if I can remember back. I believe that my freshman year in college, I hit 246. My sophomore year in college, I hit 247. My junior year in college, I hit 268. And then in my minor league career, exactly the same thing. In A-ball, I hit 248. I kept on going up like 3 points, 5 points every year. And like I said, when I was in AAA, I hit 268. And I used to tell everybody that by the year 2000, I'd be a 300 hitter.
Right. And nowadays, a guy does that in college. I don't think he's a first-round draft pick.
Yeah, I clearly got drafted on potential ability, and I also had a great summer season. I went to play in Dodge City, Kansas after my sophomore year. I played in front of a lot of scouts. They have that WBC, it's an NBC tournament. It's not the NBC network. I'm not even sure what NBC stands for, but it's in Wichita every year. And at that time, the best college teams came out of Alaska. Now the best college summer teams come out of the Cape League. But when I played back in the late 70s, the best college players would go play for the Alaska Gold Panthers or the Kenai team up there. That's where the cream of the crop went. If you were kind of a second-tier player, you went to the Jayhawk League in Kansas. And if you were below that, you ended up in the Cape League. We didn't even hear about the Cape League guys. In fact, they didn't even send a team to the NBC tournament in Wichita.
When you got drafted, the signing bonus, did you remember how much it was?
Oh, yeah. And I compare it all the time, too, because here's the funny thing. Jacoby Ellsbury went to Oregon State. He was a first-round pick by the Red Sox. He was the 19th player picked in the country. Of course, we all just know that he signed a deal for 153 million bucks. But when he signed, I believe he got 1.9 million to sign out of Oregon State. I was a first-round pick by the Red Sox, 19th player in the country. Exactly the same. Nobody cares to call me. I don't know why that thing's ringing. And I got $55,000 as a first-round pick in 1981. So, yeah, tremendous. In fact, I only made like $2.2 million in my entire 13-year career through the minor leagues and the major leagues.
So you're telling me if a Steve Lyons net worth out of those years in the major leagues, you made how much?
2.2, 2.3 million in 13 years.
Wow.
And guys now signed for more than that.
Yeah.
Way more than that, double that. You know, you put your name on the paper and you've already made more than I made in a 13-year career. And I'm not bitter about that at all. I think the money's a little crazy. I mean, but every era we say it's a little crazy. I look at what Clayton Kershaw just got, and $30 million for one guy, really out of control. But if you are going to give $30 million to one guy, he's the guy. And just a tremendous, ridiculously outstanding player, but he might even be a better guy.
When you got to Chicago, who took you in under his wing? Like, who said, hey, Steve, this is how you play the game? You know how veterans do that to rookies?
Yeah, there was a few guys over there. Of course, I'd been in the league for a year and a half now, so I kind of had gotten my feet wet, figured out what I was supposed to do. But I played with some really good examples of what ball players are supposed to be, even in Boston. You know, guys like Rich Gedman, and I always talk very fondly about Bill Buckner. You know, I mean, he got kind of ran out of town in Boston, but what he had to do just to get on the field was amazing to me with his bad ankles. You know, the prep work that he put in literally 4 hours, not 4 hours, but for hours before the game just to get on the field to play, and then literally for hours after the game trying to make sure that he could walk the next day was a great example to see. And then in Chicago, Carlton Fisk was there. And, you know, Carlton at that point, it was funny. We had a great relationship because he used to let me mess with him all the time. I could make jokes about him and get on his back and ride him, where he would never let anyone else do that to him because he was Carlton Fisk. You know, every spring I'd show up in the locker room and say, hey, aren't you going to change your number to 73 this year instead of 72 because you are a year older? You know, and no one else could get away with saying crap like that to him. And he just kind of let it slide off his back. But I watched him. You know, this is a guy at 41 years old who, after the games, would do a weight workout for an hour and a half. And this was kind of before the time when a lot of guys were lifting weights. I certainly didn't. And so I watched what he did to prepare himself to play as long as he did. And then, of course, the trade-off was that he could get to the ballpark a little bit late. You know, he didn't have to be on the field for stretching. When it was his turn to hit, he could hit. And when he was done, if he wanted to go back into the clubhouse, if it was cold outside, he could do that. And that was kind of the trade-off that you give your superstar players. The toughest guy for me, obviously, was two guys. Number one, the only guy I was ever afraid to face was a guy named John Candelaria. And
lefty,
Candy
right?
was about 6'9", threw left-handed. I hit left-handed. Every time he threw the ball, I felt like it was coming from first base. I couldn't see it. I couldn't pick it up. So I was afraid. And you, as a hitter, you don't ever want to be afraid. And he was the single guy in baseball outside of Randy Johnson, who I only faced in spring training, who was no day in the park either. I couldn't see the ball. I couldn't pick it up. And when you can't see it, that's a bad feeling. I think I was 1 for 8 career off of Candelaria. My one hit was a home run in Yankee Stadium. He got behind in the count 2-0, and I think I closed my eyes and swung really hard and hit a ball into the seats. Roger Clemens, I think, was probably had the best stuff I ever saw, and he was a guy that could throw 100 miles an hour and throw where he wanted to. You know, a lot of guys can throw hard, but being able to pinpoint your control is quite a different thing, and that's what Roger had going for him. Plus, he had secondary pitches that were outstanding as well. So, I know the history of Roger, and obviously, the situation with him and what's happened to his career. But you're never going to talk me into not knowing that this guy worked harder than I ever saw anybody else. He was tremendously competitive, and he had the most talent of anyone that I ever played with. So I'm a big fan of Roger Clemens, regardless of what happened.
As a left-handed hitter, I know you got to keep that shoulder tucked in, and you got to let the ball get deep, right? I mean, were you an out-front hitter, or you let the ball get deep in your day?
Yeah, that was my biggest problem, is that I was a front foot hitter. I lunged at everything. I could never stay back. And it's a funny thing because people say, well, why don't you just work on that? I worked on it for 30 years. I mean, you don't think I was trying to get better? I mean, I was one of those guys that knew I was going to be a career utility player, but every day of my life I tried to get better because I didn't want to be a utility player. I wanted to get to the point where I might be one of those guys that evolves a little bit later in his career and gets more playing time, and all of a sudden someone says, maybe this guy can be an everyday guy. And I wasn't complacent. Didn't want to just sit at the end of the bench and play once or twice a week, but I could never stay back. And I blame my father. And it's the only thing I'll ever blame my father for, because he was really my greatest coach ever. Really instilled in me my love for the game and really taught me how to play. But he was always the guy that said, you have to pull the ball. You have to pull the ball. Get out front, pull it. So he always wanted me to hit the ball over the second baseman's head. Whereas if I had a kid today, I would tell him, if you're a left-handed hitter, spend all of your time hitting line drives over the shortstop's head. And if you're a right-handed hitter, do the opposite. Guys that can stay back and wait and see the ball a little bit longer and can drive the ball to the opposite field, to me, are the best hitters. They can teach you how to pull. You can learn how to pull as you go along. But there's a lot more hits up the middle and the other way than there is trying to pull balls down the right field foul line all the time. Because when you're out in front, you either miss it or you pull it foul. So if you stay in the middle of the field, you're going to be a way better hitter.
Played with Ozzie Guillén when you were at Chicago, right?
Yeah.
Was he the same person as he is right now?
Yeah. In fact, I don't think Ozzie minds me telling this story about him. We didn't get along. We didn't get along that well when we played together. I think mainly because we were kind of the same guy. We were both a little hot-headed. We were both ultra competitive. And unfortunately for me, he was a 10 times better player than I was. But sometimes I didn't want to take his crap. And I remember a story when we were in Milwaukee one time, and we were winning the game like 8-2, and I was playing third base, and I clanked one, and made an error and maybe a run scored. So it ended up being 8-3. We came in for the top of the ninth and didn't get any runs. And on our way back out on the field, I said, all right, guys, let's go play some D. And he looked at me and goes, yeah, let's play some D. And I grabbed him out of second base. And, well, I was playing second base. He was playing short. And I grabbed him by the shirt at second base, and I basically read him the riot act. I said, I'm busting my ass out here just like you are. I'm trying as hard as I can to catch the ball. I said, I don't want to hear your crap when I miss one. You don't always catch everything. And we kind of went at it face to face there at second base for a while. And but since that time, I loved him as a manager. I did like him as a player. We just butted heads sometimes. I didn't want to hear it. And I always wished that I was better. I wish I could have kind of backed up anything that I might have been able to say to him. But he was truly one of the best feeling shortstops I ever saw. And I think that when you play with a player, you have a worse opinion of him, because I saw him every day. If you're a guy like me now who's a broadcaster and you see games every day, but you go and you see someone play and you say, wow, that guy can really pick it at short. And they're like, yeah, you've seen him have some pretty good days. It doesn't always do that. I watched Ozzie every day, and I watched him pick it every day. He was tremendous.
Steve, you look great. I saw you when I was at the Dodger games. I'm like, look at this guy, man. You look in the suit.
I'm well preserved.
What's the secret?
Good hair color.
Yeah, good hair color. The hair's great.
I don't know. Us, we grew up in the Pacific Northwest. It rains on you so much, it keeps your skin moisturized.
Oh, okay. So that's the secret.
That must be it.
Okay. No beauty queen, no beauty products.
I actually, believe it or not, I just had like a peel today. And I don't do that a lot. I go to the dermatologist every once in a while, and they say, I have some issues. Actually, if you can probably see a little dot right here on my face, that's a skin cancer that I actually already had removed, and I believe it's coming back. They're a little worried about that. They said I should go check that again. My ex-wife was big on the whole beauty products. She used to tell me all the time that I should get Botox right here, so because they have that 11, the little line. And I used to tell her all the time that when I was upset with her, I wanted her to actually know that I was upset, and if I had Botox, she wouldn't be able to tell. I think in my business, you have to try to pay attention. I'm 53 years old now. I'd like to continue broadcasting for another 15 years or so. But that makes me kind of an old guy. So if you can look and play younger and relate to the younger players, then that keeps you around.
Now, speaking of broadcasting, so you finished your career in 1993. You got the gig with Fox Sports in 1996. How did you get the gig? Did you have to audition? Did they offer it to you? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I did audition. I got a radio show job in Chicago maybe a year after I retired. So I knew I wanted to be in the media business. I had done some radio work even when I was playing. I did some TV work in Chicago when I was playing. I used to show up on Sundays and talk about the team on WGN. And then I tried, remember they had the baseball network, and I tried to get a gig there, and nobody would audition me. And you got to remember, I was a very average player with the nickname of Psycho. And in this business, a lot of times they want to go for the big name players. Unfortunately, and it happens time and time again, as a lot of the big name players, either they can't put a sentence together, or it came so easily to them that they can't really relate and teach the game, or they can't differentiate themselves from a guy who wasn't as good as they were, and so they just don't work out. Or the other thing is they want to dabble in broadcasting. They want to do a few games. They don't want to do a 150-game schedule. Man, that's work. That's showing up every day, studying the opposing team, studying your own team, knowing the pitchers. It's not a hard job. It's the greatest job in the world if you get to keep doing it, but you have to work at it, and you have to impress enough people to keep a job. And so I auditioned. I didn't get a chance to audition at the baseball network, and then the guy that ran that came over to Fox, and he was holding the auditions for Fox. So he gave me sort of an obligatory interview because I think someone's agent or my agent called and said, just look at the guy. He's got a personality. He's not afraid to open his mouth. And I came in and I auditioned, and the guy said I auditioned with Joe Buck, and what we did is like 3 innings of a game, and I had already did my studio audition, and I auditioned with Harold Reynolds actually, and I want to say Gus Johnson or Fran Charles, I can't remember which one it was, one of those guys, and that went really, really well. And the guy told me basically that Harold Reynolds was going to get the job, but sit next to him. Let's see how you look next to him, blah, blah, blah. Then I went in to do the game interview. And he came into the booth that I was in, and he asked Joe Buck to leave. And he sat down and he said, "You just messed my day up." And I was scared. I felt bad. I said, "Well, what did I do?" He said, he goes, "I know. We have 6 jobs open." He goes, "I know who's getting these jobs, and you're not one of them." But he said that audition was drop dead terrific, and now I don't know what to do, which was one of my prouder days ever, maybe. And long story short, it's been long. I ended up getting the job, and he kind of asked me, he said, "Do you want to be on a game crew or in the studio?" And I said, "I really want to do games, but in this case, I want to do the studio show." And he said, "Why?" I said, "Because you're going to do 4 games a week, and I'm going to be on the number 4 crew, which means my game will probably go to 6% of the country. Nobody's going to see me, hear me, or judge whether or not I'm any good. You put me on the pregame show, it'll be national. It'll be on for half an hour before every game, and everybody will be able to hear what I have to say." So the original pregame show was Chip Carey, myself, and Dave Winfield. And then Harold actually went and got a job with ESPN.
Yeah.
So that's how that started. And then 5 years later, I went to the games and did that for 6 years.
Tell me about my favorite team, the New York Yankees, in 1996. How much champagne was there? I mean, you were interviewing. George Steinbrenner was there. You had legends. All the Yankees alumni are coming. Legends are hanging out there. What was it like that?
It was awesome. This was just the beginning of what was to come there for the 4 World Series titles there, and how good those teams were, and the emerging players, guys like Jeter, who was a young kid at the time, and
a rookie that
year. You just knew that it was going to be gold. And it's funny, but I suppose since you're interviewing me, this thing always comes back to me. When I interviewed George Steinbrenner on the podium after the World Series, and I can't even remember, might have been a guy like Wetland or something that we were talking to, and I was asking him questions at the same time as I was asking someone else questions, and he, in the middle of his answer, paused and said, "We tried to trade for you a couple times. Like, why didn't you do it, George? Dang it! I mean, there was what happened? It was that deal. It was that weekend when I hit the home run against Candelaria. The next night, Tommy John was pitching, and I didn't generally. It was a weird. I didn't play against lefties very often, but Fregosi went through this weird period of time where for about a month and a half, I only played against lefties, and he had this weird reasoning. He said that we're a better team against a left-handed pitcher when you play, and then when there's a righty, you're not going to be in there. And I was like, this makes no sense to me, but as long as I get some playing time. So went deep against Candelaria on a Friday night. Saturday night, Tommy John pitched, went deep against him. And then all I heard was a bunch of rumors how George wanted to trade for me. And then, of course, it never happened. But so he was referencing that. But, just to hang around the Yankee franchise when they were playing well and when it was the toast of the town and being involved peripherally, being able to do the interviews and seeing those games was a lot of fun. And then, still being in the business, of course, even in the Yankee Diamondback series, which was unbelievable as well. Obviously the Yankees didn't win that one, but the baseball was great. And during that series that you're referencing there in '96, we took a lot of heat because both myself and Dave Winfield, and you got to remember Dave played there, and our set was just over the left field wall in that little crook in Old Yankee Stadium between the wall and the stands. They set up a thing there. So the stands were literally as close as I can see you right now. That's where people were, and the cameras were in between. And both Dave and I said that the Braves would win in 6. And you should have heard the Yankee fans killing Dave. I mean, the language, and because they could hear us. And then when they said, make your predictions, we said Braves in 6. And I thought Dave was going to lose his life. They literally had bodyguards for both of us as we walked around and stuff for our own protection.
Now, the champagne, does it hurt your eyes, Steve? When
it burns. It burns nasty. Unfortunately, I wasn't on a whole lot of championship teams. I didn't get to taste that too much, but that was after my first experience when I got burned so bad and had nothing to wipe it off with. I made sure that, one of the camera guys that was shooting whatever I did, I said, you got to have like a couple towels, and I got to have one with me. So I'll do the interview like this, but I got to have a towel in my hand because if you're not wiping that stuff off consistently, that's why you see all the guys with the goggles now because, those guys that are in it all the time, they're used to it.
What's the preparation to broadcast a game? How many hours do you actually show up at the park for a 7 o'clock game? What time do you get there? What do you have to do? Talk to me about that, the preparation.
My prep work comes on the field talking to the players. So if it's a 7 o'clock game, I'm there at 4, and I'm going to watch both teams take batting practice. I'm going to hang around the batting cage, and I'm going to talk to guys. Because I'll look at Chase Utley, and it will say, wow, he's 15 for his last 30. He's on a tear here this last week. Chase, how you doing? You feeling good? No, not feeling good. What do you mean? You're killing the ball. You're hitting like 500 your last 30 at-bats. He goes, yeah, but I don't feel good. He goes, I'm getting my hits, but, I'm getting jammed. The balls are falling in, and I just don't feel like my stroke's good right now. So had I not talked to him, I would go upstairs, and I'd do the game, and they'd say, here's Chase Utley, and I'd be, this guy's crushing the ball right now. He's coming in here, 15 for his last 30. He's on fire. No. I got a chance to talk to him. Now I can say, he doesn't feel good right now at all. Can you imagine when he does feel good?
Right.
Want to make sure, so that's the kind of homework that I like to do, talk to the guys. And to me, if you're listening to the game at home, I think that makes you feel like I did do my homework. I'm talking to and about the people that you're watching and you want to know about.
Are there players out there that are scared to fail when the game is on the line?
I think there are. I don't know if it's a conscious feeling that they have, but I think what happens, and I'm sure that I know I was guilty of this a lot because if I wasn't, I would have been a better player. I think they call some guys clutch. This guy's a clutch player. When it's on the line, he's going to come through. Sorry. That's the second one. But I think what happens to players is they do things differently. They get a little bit more nervous. They come up with the bases loaded, and instead of thinking about, I'm just going to get a good pitch to hit here and try to drive the ball up the middle, they start thinking, oh, I'm going to juice one here and hit it into the seats. I'm going to hit a grand slam, and I'm going to be the big hero here. So now their strike zone gets bigger. Now they're more anxious. Now they're a different hitter than if they walked up there with nobody on base. And I had a great conversation with Adrian Gonzalez about that. He said, when I come up and there's nobody to drive in, if I come up, there's no one on or there's a guy on first base, you're going to see me get big. I'm going to try to hit a home run because I can't drive in a run unless I drive myself in. He said, but when I have guys on base, I become a run producer. I know that if there's a guy on third, I have to get him in. Doesn't really matter about me or the guy that's on first. I got to get somebody in somehow. So I'm going to get smaller, I'm going to get quieter, and I'm going to think more up the middle. I'm going to get more base hits, more doubles when guys are on base. I'm not going to hit a ton of grand slams. You're not going to see me hitting a lot of 3-run homers because it's not my objective when guys aren't. And I thought that was a great conversation and a great way to think when you're in that situation.
What are you doing now?
I'm sitting on my butt, Eddie. I need a job. You touched on the Dodger thing, and I appreciate you staying away from it because you probably don't want me to stick my foot into my mouth. But I'm supremely disappointed to not be back with the Dodgers. I feel like I did nothing to lose my job except for not having had ever played for the Dodgers, which is kind of weird considering I worked for them for 9 years. That would make you kind of a current Dodger rather than a former Dodger. So those jobs don't come open very often. My job shouldn't have come open. So when you get it, you're like Vin Scully. He's been there 66 years. Once you get a job, especially in local broadcasting, even if you're a broadcaster who's not very good, when your fans get used to hearing you, they don't want to make a change. They're used to you. They know you. They feel like when they turn the TV on, they hear you. It's time for a game to start. So those guys don't leave those jobs very often. So consequently, this year, there's only one other open job as we speak right now, and it's the Phillies. Now, as we speak, I've had an interview with the Phillies. It went exceptionally well. But I will run into the fact that I never played for the Phillies. I go get a job for the Phillies. Even Philly fans might be saying, he never played here. But the thing I tried to stress to the man who interviewed me was, even had I played for the Phillies, it would have been 20 years ago. My last year was 1993. Does anyone know or care or worry about that anymore? I think it's important to a degree that you have a guy that used to be in the organization. But had I played for the Phillies 20 years ago, their organization is completely different. Not even the same people are running it. Not any of the same people are playing there. There's nobody the same. It shouldn't matter, but for some reason it does. But it should be like on number 6 on your list of importance. You should hire a guy that's a good broadcaster, a guy that can communicate with your fans, a guy that's going to show up every day and do his job. Like I said, I can find you Phillies that fall out of trees. But if you hire that guy, you're going to have to listen to him for 150 games. Anybody who's ever worked with me knows how hard I work. Anybody who's ever worked with me loves working with me. I'm the easiest guy in the world to be around in a work environment. I never say no. Anything you ask me to do, I'm going to do it. And so I need whoever else, the next guy that waits in line to hire me will get an outstanding employee that does his job the right way.
Well, Steve, I'm definitely crossing my fingers. I think you will, man. I mean, come on. Who's not going to hire you? Come on now.
It's like we talked about before. There's just not that many opportunities out there, and when they come up, sometimes they get filled by a guy who's been around the organization before. Unfortunately, I played for the Red Sox, the White Sox, the Braves, and Montreal. Montreal is no longer. The Braves don't need anybody. The Red Sox don't need anybody, and the White Sox don't need anybody. So, you get guys that stay there for a long time, unless there happens to be an opening right at that time, and you happen to be the guy waiting in line. It's kind of a tough business.
Steve, for the movie For the Love of the Game, did you have to audition for that?
I was supposed to audition for it, and the producer who was supposed to audition me canceled. And so my agent at the time, who they virtually did nothing else for me, called the guy back and said, hey, you screwed up the audition, so you have to give him the gig. And the guy said, all right. And it turned out being a really cool thing because, number one, I technically was the last guy ever to work with Vin Scully, because in that movie I worked with Vin and he never worked with anybody. So that was the last time he worked with anyone. And number two, I think because they were paying Vin so much to do it, they felt bad, and so they figured we'll pay Steve like half as much as we're paying Vin, which was a really good payday for a day and a half work. When my agent called me, he said, I think they're going to pay $25 to do it. And I said, well, how much time is it? They said a day, maybe a day and a half. And I'm like, $2,500? Yeah, it's not bad. And he said, no, $25,000. I'm like, I'm in. Kidding me? Absolutely.
If there was a biography about Steve Lyons, which actor would you hire to play you?
Matthew McConaughey.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely. He said, I actually was at a Dodger game. He threw out the first pitch. It was like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Threw a strike.
I don't get that, though. Actually, that's not true. I've maybe drunk girls think I look like him.
Did you watch Dallas Buyers Club?
Oh, phenomenal. That's the movie I saw. I'm a SAG-AFTRA member. I got to vote this year, which is really cool because they send you all the movies ahead of time.
Yeah, me too.
My girlfriend's a huge movie buff. We went to the Oscars last year, and she knows everything about everything. I'm like, oh, it's a cool movie. She can tell you who the producer, director, all that stuff is. She's really into that kind of stuff. But that was the best movie we saw. And of course, so far he's kind of cleaning up on the awards. But the weight loss, the fact that he doesn't even look like the same guy, and Jared Leto too, playing the cross-dresser, they both just did a phenomenal job. And I'm very critical of movies. I love to go to them, love to watch them, but there's not many of them that I like. I'm like, that would never happen, or how could you do that? That doesn't, And she's like, shut up. I'm not a big shoot 'em up movie, because I'm like, wait a minute, the guy has one 6-shooter, and the other guys have Uzis, and they can't hit him, and he takes out 6 guys with it. Right. Come on. I just don't, I don't want. She goes, you got to just go with it. I'm like, I'm not going with it. I don't see it. I like movies. I like to go to movies that I think could have happened, or true life stories like that one was. Where
I love that. You know what? If you notice all the films this year, notice there's a lot of true life stories out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and with the Dallas Buyers Club, they rejected the script 137 times, according to Matthew McConaughey.
Wow. That's a lot of rejection. Well, that's Hollywood too. That's being an actor.
Yeah,
you go
absolutely.
They say no, and then the guy that gets the parts exactly like you, and you're like, they pick him and not me. What's the deal there? I don't get it. But we really enjoy that kind of stuff. And I know the guy that basically wrote the screenplay for The Butler. And it was, they got completely shut out, which is too bad. It was a good movie. And I think that 12 Years a Slave, kind of the same subject matter may have hurt them. And the fact that The Butler came out so early, it's not in the voters' minds. The best Oscar movies, they come out late. They come out late in the year.
They do it on purpose. I'll tell you what, did you watch Lone Survivor?
I have not seen that one yet. I've heard really, really good things about it.
You're going to love this film.
Yeah.
Excellent film. Mark Wahlberg did a great job.
Yeah, and I do. I'm leaving actually this Saturday to go to the Red Sox fantasy camp. I've been doing it for 20 years, and for the last 4 years, we've had a Wounded Warrior Project group come down. There's usually 10 or 12 guys and or girls, and there's usually one Wounded Warrior on every team. Just amazing, those guys, what they've been through, and it's so great for us to kind of welcome those guys into another team. They know their team, they know their family when they're in the military, and a lot of them with the post-distress orders that they have, post-traumatic stress disorder. They say they don't even understand it. The 2 guys that I talked to last year said they're having the best time of their life, but when they wake up tomorrow morning, they won't want to go. They don't want to go. They're going to need some help. Someone's going to have to talk them into going again.